The chandelier's glow shimmered across the long oak table as the Carver family gathered for what was supposed to be a warm, elegant family dinner in Cedar Falls. Laughter filled the room, glasses clinked, and the air smelled of roasted rosemary and comfort until Grant Carver stood, tapping his glass for attention. With his perfect smile and polished confidence, he said 6 words that froze every fork in midair. "I'd like you all to meet someone very special." From the doorway stepped Ariel Monroe, glowing in a fitted ivory dress, her hands gently resting on a pregnant belly. For a moment, time stopped. Rebecca Carver, his wife, sat at the head of the table, her expression calm, almost serene, while beneath that stillness, a storm quietly gathered. They thought she'd break that night. But what no one at that table knew was that Rebecca had come prepared, and before the night was over, she would pull out papers that would end Grant's carefully constructed life forever. Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, please click subscribe. Every single click helps us tell stories of courage and truth. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from. Because when we share these stories together, we remind each other that even in pain, we can rise. The chandelier's glow shimmered like liquid gold over the long oak table as voices and laughter filled the grand dining room of the Carver family estate in Cedar Falls. It looked like the perfect family gathering. Crystal glasses clinked, the air rich with roasted lamb and rosemary, and polished silver caught the light like small suns. But under that warm glow, something tense and electric waited to break. Grant Carver, the man of the house, stood tall at the table's center. In his mid-30s, handsome and polished, he wore confidence like armor. To the world, he was a man of influence, a self-made real estate executive known for his charm and unshakable marriage. Yet behind that smile lay a man carrying secrets. At the head of the table sat Rebecca Carver, his wife, a quieter, thoughtful, devoted woman with soft eyes and gentle manners. Her calmness often made people overlook her strength, but tonight, that silence carried weight. She had planned this dinner weeks ago, hoping to repair the distance she'd felt his late nights, his unexplained absences, his sudden bursts of temper masked by charm. Around them sat Harold Carver, Grant's father, a proud patriarch guarding the Carver legacy, Martha, Grant's mother, known for her controlling warmth, and several cousins from the family's real estate branch. Even Delia, the longtime housemaid, lingered at the edge, her eyes flicking nervously from Rebecca to Grant. "Beautiful evening," Harold said, forcing cheer. "It's good to see family come together again." Grant smiled, lifting his glass. "To family," he echoed. The toast sounded hollow, like something rehearsed. Rebecca met his gaze. "To honesty," she added softly. Her voice didn't rise, but it cut through the chatter like a blade. Grant's smile tightened. A waiter, young, jittery, new, approached with a tray of red wine. As he leaned in, a glass slipped, spilling crimson across Grant's sleeve. The sound of shattering glass silenced the room. Grant's jaw flexed. He forced a laugh, but his eyes burned. "Careful," he muttered through clenched teeth. Rebecca's hand brushed his arm, calming, steady. "It's just wine," she said, her tone gentle, but her eyes didn't leave his. Inside, she felt a strange chill. Something about his anger felt different, too deep, too ready. Martha broke the tension. "Accidents happen. Let's enjoy the meal, yes?" Conversation resumed, but the energy had shifted. Rebecca noticed Grant's nervous glances toward the doorway, the way he checked his watch twice. She caught a small, folded note half hidden beside his plate. Her teacher's eyes were trained to read even the smallest clues. He leaned toward her suddenly, voice low, polite smile fixed. "You'll be surprised who's joining us tonight." Rebecca blinked. "Who?" He straightened, his grin spreading like a mask. "Someone very special." In that moment, Rebecca didn't yet know that her husband's special guest would shatter everything she believed about love, loyalty, and legacy. The camera lingered on her face as she looked toward the tall double doors at the end of the hall. The laughter around her blurred into a hum, and the chandelier's glow seemed to flicker. Something or someone was coming. Rebecca's hand brushed the small envelope hidden inside her purse, the one she had sealed that morning without telling anyone. Whatever happened tonight, she was ready. The heavy oak doors swung open with a deep, echoing creak. Every head at the long oak table turned. For a heartbeat, Even the chandelier's glow seemed to pause mid-flicker. The air, once filled with laughter and chatter, fell into stunned silence. Standing in the doorway was a young woman none of them had seen before, Ariel Monroe. Early 30s, glowing skin, confident eyes, and a gentle hand resting on a pregnant belly under a sleek, fitted dress the color of ivory. Her smile was delicate, but it carried something bold, almost rehearsed. Grant's voice cut through the quiet. "Everyone," he said with an easy grin. "This is Ariel. Someone very special to me." The words landed like thunder. Gasps, murmurs, shock, confusion, disbelief. Rebecca's fork slipped from her hand and clattered against her plate. The sound was small but sharp enough to echo in the vast room. Her pulse raced, but her face stayed calm, nervous but composed. She looked at her husband, her voice soft yet steady. "Special how, Grant?" He hesitated for a second, then placed a proud hand on Ariel's shoulder. "She's expecting," he said, smiling wider. "And I'll be a father again." The words shattered the illusion of peace like glass underfoot. Harold Carver, Grant's father, slammed his palm on the table, silverware rattling. "Are you out of your mind?" he barked. His old, proud eyes flamed with fury. Martha, the mother, looked between her son and Rebecca, torn between fear and embarrassment. "Grant, what are you saying?" Grant's calm tone held arrogance. "I'm saying what everyone deserves to know. This dinner isn't about Rebecca, it's about our family's future." The image of a perfect husband was breaking before their eyes. Rebecca's voice came soft and trembling, but her words cut clean. "So this," she said, nodding toward Ariel's stomach, "is the new future?" Ariel lowered her gaze but didn't speak. Her silence wasn't shame, it was part of the performance. Grant straightened, his smile tight. "Rebecca, let's not make this dramatic. We've both grown apart. Ariel understands me. She's different." Rebecca's throat tightened, but her eyes, steady, alert, studied his every word. Beneath the shock, something in her heart clicked. The cracks were already forming long before tonight. Harold rose from his seat. "You are disgracing this family, Grant. The Carver legacy means honor, not scandal." Grant laughed coldly. "Legacy? You've built it on silence, not truth." In that moment, the Carver name, once wrapped in respect, began to unravel. And Rebecca understood that this wasn't just betrayal. It was war, fought behind polished smiles. Rebecca's hands trembled under the table, yet her expression didn't betray the storm inside. Her stillness was strength. She turned to the maid, Delia, and whispered, "Please bring me my bag." Everyone's attention stayed on Grant and Ariel, who now sat side by side, hands intertwined like a couple proud of their sin. As Delia disappeared down the hall, Rebecca exhaled slowly. She glanced at the flickering chandelier and then at her husband, whose smile had grown too confident. Her mind whispered a single promise. He thinks he's rewriting the story tonight, but soon he'll learn every lie leaves a paper trail. Rebecca's eyes fell on the chandelier's reflection in the wineglass, warped, doubled, fragile. The cracks that began tonight would only widen when light finally hit the truth. The dining room trembled with tension. Voices rose, chairs scraped, and the once warm family gathering turned into a battlefield of whispers and disbelief. The Carver family name, long tied to pride and respect in Cedar Falls, hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Harold Carver stood first, his old hands shaking but his voice firm. "You've humiliated your wife and this family, Grant. The Carver legacy was built on honor, not spectacle." Grant's jaw tightened. His polished smile had cracked, revealing a glimmer of arrogance beneath. "Honor?" he repeated. "You mean silence. You built this family by pretending nothing ever happens behind closed doors." The chandelier's glow threw harsh light over his face, making him look less like the charming man of influence everyone admired, and more like someone rotten beneath the surface. Across the table, Ariel Monroe, his pregnant companion, sat perfectly still. Her delicate hand rested on her stomach, as though protecting her unborn child, but her eyes darted nervously toward Grant. Beneath the elegance of her fitted dress, there was unease, a subtle reminder that she wasn't just an outsider, she was part of the storm he had created. Rebecca remained seated, her fingers gently tracing the rim of her glass. She looked calm, but inside, her heart pounded against the walls of her chest. Her world was collapsing, yet her stillness was strength. She whispered softly, mostly to herself, "You didn't even hesitate." Grant heard her and gave a mocking laugh. Hesitate. Rebecca, you've always been too emotional. Ariel understands business, ambition, drive. She doesn't drag me down. Dead weight. The words drop like poison. Rebecca's eyes flicked to him, then away, her voice calm but low. Ambition isn't love, Grant. It's loneliness dressed in confidence. It was the first crack in the polished mask of a man who thought he could build an empire on deception, greed, and betrayal. Martha, trying to hold the pieces together, whispered, "Enough, please. Let's not destroy everything in one night." But it was already too late. Grant rose from his chair, placing his hand firmly on Ariel's shoulder. "What's done is done. The future is hers and mine." Harold stared at his son with something heavier than anger disappointment. "You're throwing away everything your grandfather built." Grant leaned closer, his tone sharp. "No, father. I'm rebuilding it my way." Silence swallowed the room. Even the waiter froze at the edge of the hall, unsure if he should move. Then, suddenly, Rebecca stood. Her voice was soft but carried through the silence like a blade. "Then build, Grant. Build whatever future you want. Just remember, every structure built on lies eventually collapses." Grant smiled faintly, thinking it was a threat born of pain. But behind her words hid a plan, one written not in anger, but in patience, precision, and strategy. The chandelier's glow dimmed as the storm gathered outside. A cold breeze slipped through the cracked window, carrying the smell of rain like warning. Rebecca turned toward the hallway where her study waited. Her thoughts whispered to the future. If he wanted a new foundation, she would make sure it crumbled the moment he tried to stand on it. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet, please, take a second to do it now. Every click, every share, every comment helps us keep telling stories that give strength to women and children who've been broken, forgotten, or silenced. When you subscribe, you're not just supporting a channel, you're standing beside survivors, saying their stories matter. Turn on your notification bell so you never miss a story that could change a life. And in the comments, tell us, where are you watching from, and what part of this story spoke to your heart. The sound of the front door slamming echoed through the mansion like a gunshot. The Carver family dinner was over, but its poison lingered in the air. Rebecca Carver stood alone in the dining hall, staring at the long oak table, now littered with half-eaten food and broken glass. The chandelier's glow flickered weakly above her, its light trembling just like her hands. For a moment, she wanted to scream, to break every plate, to tear down every illusion that had once felt like love. But she didn't. Instead, she inhaled slowly and straightened her back. Her stillness was strength. Delia, the housemaid, entered quietly, a loyal woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and the gentle grace of someone who had served the Carvers for decades. She whispered, "Ma'am, are you all right?" Rebecca turned to her. "No, Delia, but I will be." Her tone was calm, almost detached. The camera followed Rebecca as she walked down the long hallway, her heels clicking like metronomes counting down to something inevitable. The golden walls of the house seemed colder tonight, as if they, too, knew the truth. She entered her study, her sanctuary. The chandelier's glow here was softer, the air still. The room smelled faintly of old books and cedar polish. On the desk lay a locked drawer. Rebecca knelt, opened it slowly, and pulled out a box filled with collected documents, bank statements, real estate ledgers, and recorded meeting times she had kept hidden for months. This wasn't new. She had sensed his distance, noticed late nights and unexplained absences, and followed the trail like a quiet detective. A flashback rolled in. Rebecca in her classroom weeks ago, grading papers when a message from Grant popped up, working late again. But behind that message, the faint reflection of another woman in the office window, Ariel laughing beside him. Back to the present, Rebecca pressed her trembling hands over the papers. "You think you fooled me," she whispered. "But every lie leaves a footprint." Evelyn Pierce, her friend and accountant, appeared in the doorway. A sharp, intuitive woman in her early 40s, Evelyn had helped Rebecca track the secrets hidden in ledgers. She said softly, "You don't have to do this alone." Rebecca looked up, her eyes steady. "I'm not. I have the truth and that's enough." Evelyn approached the desk. "These records, they're serious, Rebecca. If what you suspect is real, it's not just cheating, it's fraud." Rebecca nodded. "Then it's time someone saw who he really is, a man of influence who built an empire on deception and greed." Outside, Thunder cracked across Cedar Falls. The wind pressed hard against the windows, shaking them like warnings. Rebecca stood by the glass, looking out at the storm. "He thinks I'll stay quiet," she murmured. "But silence has its own kind of power." Evelyn frowned. "What are you planning?" Rebecca turned back slowly, her reflection splitting across the window pane. "I'm planning to let him think he's safe," she said, "until he's not." She placed a sealed envelope back into the drawer. Its label read simply, "When the time is right." And that time was closer than anyone knew. The boardroom lights glared like interrogation lamps, bright and cold. Grant Carver stood at the head of the long glass table inside Carver Realty, his reflection slicing across its surface like two versions of himself, one smiling, one hollow. Around him sat men in suits, Leo Graves, Terry Malone, and Mayor Judith Lang, his chosen allies in his growing web of deception, greed, and betrayal. "Gentlemen," Grant began, his voice firm, "the Cedar Ridge project is the future of the Carver legacy. Once we move these properties through the shell companies, the profits will triple." Leo Graves, a stocky man with sharp eyes and a reputation for cutting corners, leaned forward. "And your wife Rebecca, she won't question the transfers?" Grant smirked. "Rebecca is sentimental, not strategic. She teaches kids. She believes I'm still the image of a perfect husband." Across the table, Terry Malone, the company's quiet bookkeeper, adjusted his glasses nervously. He was a man who had seen too much, kept too many secrets in ledgers that were meant to stay hidden. "Mr. Carver," he said carefully, "the accounts overseas. They're already under review by investors. If they notice the adjustments—" Grant cut him off, voice sharp. "Then adjust harder, Terry. This empire doesn't run on hesitation, it runs on loyalty." Mayor Judith Lang, sitting gracefully in her tailored gray suit, folded her hands. "You're playing with fire, Grant. These properties belong to public trusts. Move them wrong, and it's fraudulent real estate transfers." Grant smiled coldly. "Only if someone finds out." The camera panned across his reflection on the glass. Perfect posture, perfect smile, but behind it, the mask of success was beginning to slip. As he signed the contracts, Leo's phone buzzed with a notification. He looked at the message, then at Grant. "You might want to see this." Grant frowned, taking the phone. A photo filled the screen. Ariel Monroe, his pregnant lover, stepping out of a clinic with another man's arm around her for support. A muscle twitched in his jaw. "Who took this?" Leo shrugged. "Someone from the press, maybe. They say she's been seen talking to a lawyer." Grant's pen froze in his hand. For the first time that night, a flicker of fear replaced confidence. He built his empire on polished glass, never realizing it reflected everything he tried to hide. He slammed the phone down, forcing a smirk to cover the tremor in his voice. "She's just securing things for us. Don't read into it." But even he didn't believe it. As the meeting ended, Terry Malone lingered, picking up one of the signed pages. In small print, he noticed something strange. One account number didn't match the others. A single misplaced digit. To most, it was nothing. To him, it screamed danger. Later, as Grant walked to his car, the night in Cedar Falls felt heavier than usual. The streetlights flickered like nervous eyes watching him. He didn't know that Henry Miles, a private investigator, sat parked across the street, camera in hand, quietly documenting every step he took. Henry's camera clicked one last time as lightning flashed across the sky. Every empire leaves a paper trail, and Rebecca was already following it. Rain hammered against the cafe windows like impatient fingers. Inside, the smell of coffee mingled with the tension in the air. Rebecca Carver sat at a corner table, her coat still damp from the storm outside. Across from her sat Dr. Samuel Price, a sharp-eyed attorney in his late 30s, calm, steady, and known across Cedar Falls for defending people everyone else had given up on. He placed his leather briefcase on the table, eyes narrowing as he opened the folders she had handed him. Inside were bank statements, real estate ledgers, and recorded meeting times, evidence of something larger than betrayal. "Rebecca," he said slowly, flipping through the papers, "this isn't just infidelity. What you have here points to financial fraud and embezzlement. If you push this, Grant could lose everything: his firm, his assets, his reputation." Rebecca's fingers tightened around her cup. "Good," she said softly, "because he already took everything from me." The line hit like a quiet explosion. In that small cafe, a Woman began rewriting her story not with rage, but with reason, patience, and strategy. Samuel studied her face. You've been tracking this for months, haven't you? Rebecca nodded, her expression calm. Since the first night he lied about a business trip. I noticed the inconsistencies, the extra accounts, the sudden transfers. He built a polished empire on lies. Samuel leaned forward. Did anyone else help you gather this? Evelyn Pierce, she said. She verified the data. And Henry Miles, a private investigator, captured photos of his late-night meetings. Samuel's brow furrowed. You're methodical, but you need to be careful. Grant's a man of influence. He knows people in high places. One wrong move, and he'll bury the evidence before you can use it. Rebecca's calm voice didn't waver. That's why I haven't moved yet. I want him to think I'm broken, not watching. The lawyer paused, impressed. So what's your plan? She opened her bag and placed 2 envelopes on the table, one white, one gold. The white one holds proof of his fraudulent real estate transfers. The gold one holds something personal, something that will finish him. Samuel raised an eyebrow. What's inside the gold envelope? Rebecca's eyes darkened. You'll see soon. For a moment, silence filled the space. The sound of rain softened, and the reflection of city lights shimmered on the table between them, 2 warriors planning in the shadows. Samuel closed the folder and looked directly at her. You're not after revenge, are you? Rebecca shook her head. No, I'm after justice. He nodded, sliding the documents back into his briefcase. Then we'll do this right by the law, by the truth. As he rose to leave, Rebecca's phone buzzed. A message flashed on the screen. Dinner tomorrow. Family only. Be ready. Grant. Her heart stilled. The family gathering was happening again too, soon, too perfectly timed. She slipped the phone into her coat pocket, her calm mask unshaken. Rebecca whispered to herself, if he wants another dinner, he'll get one, just not the one he expects. And when that night came, every lie he built would be served back to him at his own table. The bright clinic lights glared like judgment. Ariel Monroe sat nervously in the waiting area of Cedar Falls Medical Center, her hand resting over her pregnant belly. She was dressed neatly in a soft pink fitted dress, her face painted in calm confidence, but her fingers kept tapping the armrest. Today wasn't just another checkup. It was proof of a future she believed belonged to her. Behind the counter, the nurse smiled. Miss Monroe, we just need one more sample for the file. She nodded, unaware that someone else was in the same building. Rebecca Carver, standing quietly near the back corridor in a long coat, her expression hidden but her eyes sharp. Intensity spiked. The camera lingered on both women, one believing she had won, the other preparing to end the game. When Samuel Price, Rebecca's lawyer, had first mentioned the idea of verification, Rebecca had resisted. But when Henry Miles, the private investigator, handed her photos of Ariel meeting investors at the same time, Grant claimed to be working late, she knew. She needed evidence, not emotion. And so, this visit wasn't a coincidence. It was strategy. Rebecca watched as the nurse carried Ariel's sealed sample envelope toward the lab window. She moved closer, her voice low but firm. Excuse me, could you help me deliver a file to Dr. Harris? It's urgent. She handed over an identical envelope, one she'd prepared earlier, labeled with Ariel's name. The nurse nodded without suspicion. Of course. The switch happened in one smooth moment no one noticed. As the nurse disappeared, Rebecca's hands trembled for the first time that day. She exhaled softly, whispering, Patience, Rebecca. Stillness is strength. Truth doesn't shout. It waits, watches, and arrives with precision and patience. Outside, thunder rolled over Cedar Falls. Rebecca stepped out of the clinic and into the rain, each drop washing away a piece of her hesitation. The test results would come soon, the proof that would shatter his carefully constructed life. Later that night, the results arrived in a discreet envelope at her doorstep, marked confidential. Inside, under clear medical formatting, it read, Paternity result, excluded, 0% match. Her hand covered her mouth, not from surprise but from validation. Every instinct had been right. The unborn child wasn't Grant's. She sat at her long oak table, staring at the paper under the chandelier's glow. Tears welled but didn't fall. She whispered, So that's why you were never afraid. You didn't even need to be careful. Evelyn Pierce entered quietly, setting down 2 mugs of tea. You have what you need now, she said softly. Rebecca nodded. Almost, but timing matters. The next dinner will do the talking. Evelyn's brow furrowed. You're really going? Rebecca looked up, her calm smile hiding fire. He called it a family dinner. Let's make sure it becomes a reckoning. Lightning flashed through the window, catching the reflection of the white envelope she now tucked beside the golden one. 2 weapons. 2 truths. Rebecca whispered to herself as the storm raged outside. At the next dinner, silence will end, and justice will sit at the head of the table. The sound of laughter echoed through Carver Realty's glass halls, forced a hollow laughter. Cameras flashed as reporters surrounded Grant Carver and Ariel Monroe at a press event. A large banner hung behind them. Carver Expansion, Building the Future. Grant, in his crisp navy suit, smiled for the cameras, hand resting proudly on Ariel's pregnant belly. But behind every flash of light was a shadow. The polished empire he flaunted was rotten beneath the surface, and somewhere across Cedar Falls, a quiet storm was gathering. Intensity filled the air. Grant shook hands with Mayor Judith Lang, promising progress and partnership. His voice carried charm, but his eyes betrayed exhaustion. Here's to family, he said into the microphone, and to new beginnings. The crowd applauded. But Harold Carver, his father, stood at the back of the room, face stone cold. When the cameras turned away, Harold stepped forward. You think this spectacle hides your sins? He whispered. Grant smirked, refusing to look at him. You taught me to smile through everything, Father. I learned from the best. Harold's voice dropped. You've betrayed not just your wife, but the Carver legacy. Remember, every empire built on lies collapses. Grant's jaw tightened. I'm not collapsing, I'm evolving. The scene cut sharply to Rebecca Carver, standing by her study window. Outside, the same speech played on the TV. Grant's confident smile filled the screen. His voice, calm and convincing, spoke of unity, but she saw the cracks, the illusion, the deception, the arrogance. Evelyn Pierce, her accountant friend, entered quietly, holding a file. The auditors found it, she said. The missing transfers, the ones tied to the shell companies. He's moving money through Ariel's sister's firm, Cynthia Monroe Investments. Rebecca took the file and studied the numbers. Every page was a confession written in ink. He's laundering through family, she murmured. That's how he kept the accounts hidden. Evelyn's voice trembled. Are you sure you're ready for this dinner? It's risky. Rebecca looked up, her expression calm but unreadable. It's not risk, it's timing. Patience is the sharpest weapon. She turned toward the oak cabinet, opening it to reveal the 2 envelopes, one white and one gold. The white envelope held the financial evidence. The gold one, the DNA proof. She slid both into her handbag with deliberate precision. Henry Miles, the private investigator, entered next. Press will be there tomorrow, he reported. You said to invite them discreetly? Rebecca nodded. Quietly enough to look like coincidence. Loud enough for the truth to echo. Henry hesitated, then smiled faintly. You're good, Mrs. Carver. Too good. Rebecca's gaze stayed fixed on the screen, where Grant kissed Ariel's hand for the cameras. No, she said softly. I'm just done pretending. Every storm has an eye, and in that stillness before impact, silence feels like peace. But peace was never her goal, it was justice. As the night deepened, Rebecca rehearsed her composure. Every movement was calm, every breath deliberate. Tomorrow's dinner would be a reckoning disguised as celebration. Rebecca placed her phone on the table, the screen glowing with Grant's text. Family dinner, 7 p.m. Don't be late. She smiled faintly and whispered, I won't, but you'll wish I had been. Asterisk. The Carver mansion glowed like a palace under the evening sky. Cars lined the driveway, and camera flashes flickered from the gates. Tonight was the family gathering. Everyone in Cedar Falls had been talking about a celebration of unity and legacy. But inside the mansion, unity was a mask, and legacy was about to burn. The long oak table gleamed under the chandelier's glow, set with gold-trimmed plates, crystal glasses clinked, and laughter that sounded forced. Grant Carver, dressed in an impeccable black suit, moved through the crowd like a man reborn. To the world, he looked like victory in human form, a man of influence, a devoted husband who had forgiven his past mistakes. At his side stood Ariel Monroe, radiant and proud, her pregnant belly framed by a silver-fitted dress. She smiled for the reporters, playing her part perfectly. The intensity hit when Harold Carver arrived. The patriarch's entrance was like thunder. The laughter stopped. His voice cut through the noise. Let's see if family still means the same thing it used to. Grant's jaw tightened, but his charm returned in seconds. Of course, Father. Tonight is about family and about a new beginning. At the far end of the table, Rebecca Carver entered quietly. She wore a simple black gown, elegant and modest. The guest turned, whispering. She didn't flinch. Her calm composure stood out more than any diamond in the room. Every stage has its lead actor, but tonight the quiet one held the script that would end the show. Rebecca took her seat. She smiled at the guests, then at Grant. You wanted me here, she said softly. So, here I am. The dinner began. Waiters moved elegantly. The air filled with perfume and pretense. Glasses clinked, and the chandelier's glow shimmered over perfectly placed smiles. But beneath the surface, eyes watched. Hearts raced. Evelyn Pierce and Dr. Samuel Price, seated near the back, exchanged glances. They knew what was coming. Hidden among the guests, Henry Miles, the private investigator, filmed quietly with a button camera. Every second was being documented. Grant cleared his throat, raising his glass. To family, he began, his tone smooth. To the future, and to forgiveness. A polite cheer followed. Cameras flashed. Then, from across the table, Rebecca's voice came soft but steady. Forgiveness, she repeated, her tone sharp as glass. An interesting word, coming from a man who built forgiveness on deception, greed, and betrayal. A ripple of whispers moved across the room. Ariel's hand froze midair, her smile faltering. Grant tried to laugh. Rebecca, let's not. But she didn't stop. Her voice stayed calm, her words precise. You said this night was about family, Grant. I agree. So let's talk about it truthfully this time. The camera zoomed in on her face. Calm, confident, unshakable. Harold leaned forward, his eyes burning. Rebecca, what are you saying? Rebecca looked at him, then at Grant, and smiled faintly. I'm saying the truth deserves a seat at this table. The silence that followed was suffocating. Every heartbeat seemed to echo under the chandelier's glow. As Rebecca reached for her handbag under the table, her fingers brushed against two envelopes, one white, one gold. And by the time the second one opened, the Carver name would never sound the same again. The room went silent the moment Rebecca Carver rose from her seat. Her calm, steady presence cut through the noise like a blade. The faint hum of the chandelier's glow above flickered across her face, half light, half shadow. Every eye turned toward her, the loyal Carver family, the curious guests, the press, and of course, Grant Carver, the man who thought he still controlled the room. Intensity surged. Rebecca's soft voice carried further than any shout. Since tonight is about family, she said, I'd like to share something too. The glasses clinked, but no one drank. Even Ariel Monroe, her face pale despite her flawless fitted dress, turned in confusion. Grant tried to laugh, but it sounded strained. Rebecca, please, not tonight. Rebecca looked straight at him. You asked me here, Grant. You wanted family at your table. Well, I brought it. She reached into her bag and pulled out a white envelope. It was pristine, heavy, and sealed its mere presence enough to make the air shift. Sometimes, the most powerful weapon at a family dinner isn't a scream, it's paper. Harold Carver, his stern face drawn with tension, leaned forward. What's in that envelope? Rebecca opened it carefully, unfolding the first page divorce papers already signed. The audience gasped. Murmurs spread. Grant's image of a perfect husband began to crumble before everyone. Grant forced a grin. You can't just walk away. The prenup protects me. Rebecca met his eyes with calm precision. You're right, Grant. It did. Until you violated it. The words hit like lightning. She slid another sheet across the table, bank statements, receipts, and shell company transfers. These, she continued, prove you used joint funds to fuel your secret empire and to support her. She nodded toward Ariel, whose trembling hands clutched her glass. Evelyn Pierce, seated near the back, exchanged a look with Dr. Samuel Price, the attorney. Samuel stood slowly and placed a file on the table. Every fraudulent real estate transfer, every undisclosed account, every shady investor documented, verified, notarized. Gasps filled the air again. The polished empire was rotten beneath the surface. Grant's charm faltered. His voice rose. You have no idea what you're talking about. But his father, Harold, spoke before Rebecca could. I warned you. You betrayed your family, your name, and your wife. Grant's face hardened. You're all turning on me? Rebecca's tone softened, but her words cut deep. No, Grant. You turned on yourself. Cameras flashed as reporters whispered, their curiosity feeding on his panic. Ariel's face went pale. Tears gathered in her eyes. The storm she'd built with patience was finally beginning to break. Rebecca placed the open envelope flat on the table. This was the first truth, she said softly. But there's another. The air thickened. Guests leaned forward, sensing something bigger waiting beneath her calm exterior. Grant's mask slipped completely, his breathing uneven, his voice cracking. What are you talking about? He whispered. Rebecca's eyes didn't leave his. You'll see soon. Rebecca touched the gold envelope, still resting in her bag. Her fingers lingered on it like a silent promise. The next truth wouldn't just ruin him. It would erase everything he believed was his. The sound of the white envelope hitting the long oak table still echoed when Rebecca reached back into her handbag. Her calm fingers brushed the edge of a second envelope, this one gold, sealed like something sacred. The entire Carver family froze. Even the chandelier's glow seemed to dim, as though the house itself held its breath. Intensity exploded. Grant's voice cracked through the silence. What is that? Rebecca looked at him, her face serene, her tone steady. It's the second truth, the one you'll wish I never opened. Ariel Monroe, seated beside him, paled. Her hand moved protectively over her pregnant belly, but guilt was already written across her face. Harold Carver stood, his cane trembling slightly in his grip. Rebecca, what are you doing? She didn't answer. She simply tore open the gold envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Some weapons are made of steel, others are made of silence, patience, and proof. Rebecca lifted the paper. This, she said, is a DNA test. Gasps, murmurs, disbelief. Grant blinked, confused. DNA test? What are you? Rebecca laid it flat on the table so the guests could see the bold letters across the top. Paternity result. Excluded. 0% match. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then chaos. Ariel's glass shattered, falling from her trembling hand. Grant's face drained of color, eyes wide, disbelief etched deep. Harold's voice broke like thunder. Good Lord, that child isn't yours? Rebecca's voice stayed quiet, almost gentle. No, Harold, it isn't. She turned back to Grant. You built your betrayal around a lie so large, even you couldn't control it. The child you paraded as your legacy was never yours. Grant shook his head, stammering. That's impossible. You forged this. You're trying to destroy me. Rebecca tilted her head. Destroy you? No, Grant. You did that yourself. I just made sure the world sees it. Evelyn Pierce, calm and meticulous, rose from her seat at the back. The test was conducted by the clinic where Ariel was treated, she said. Witnessed, sealed, and delivered by a notary. Every step documented. Reporters gasped. Cameras flashed. Whispers spread like fire. The image of a perfect husband was dead, replaced by the spectacle of a man cornered by his own deceit. Grant lunged across the table, slamming his hands down inches from Rebecca's face. You planned this. Rebecca didn't flinch. No, Grant, I prepared for it. He froze. Something in her eyes, the power hidden behind quiet strength, made him step back. Every lie leaves a receipt, every deception, a paper trail. And tonight, all of them led here. Ariel wept quietly, head bowed, as Harold sank into his chair, covering his face. You've disgraced us all, he whispered. Grant looked around the room at his family, his colleagues, the flashing cameras, and realized the truth. He was no longer in control. Rebecca slowly gathered the papers and slid them back into her bag. You called this dinner a new beginning, she said softly. You were right. It is. Rebecca turned toward the stunned guests, her voice a whisper but her words sharp. The night isn't over yet. Justice hasn't spoken, but it will. The sound of Grant's shattered pride filled the room louder than the broken glass on the long oak table. His chest rose and fell, his voice cracking as reporters' cameras flashed like lightning. The chandelier's glow trembled across his pale face, revealing not power but fear. Intensity burned. Turn those cameras off! Grant shouted, his hand trembling as he pointed at the press. This dinner is private, but no one moved. The moment had escaped his control. The Carver family name, once the emblem of wealth, respect, and legacy, was unraveling in real time. Harold Carver stood, his aging hands gripping the chair. "You brought this on yourself," he said, his voice trembling with disappointment. "You've tainted the Carver bloodline for greed, deception, and disgrace." Grant's lips quivered. "Father, don't call me that," Harold snapped. "You betrayed your wife, your family, and this city." Across the table, Ariel Monroe wept quietly, her mascara running in dark rivers down her cheeks. Her fitted silver dress now looked like armor cracking under shame. "I didn't know, Grant," she whispered, voice shaking. "You told me it was love." Rebecca sat in silence, her composure intact. She didn't gloat. She didn't cry. Her calm made the chaos louder. The quietest person in the room often carries the loudest truth. Tonight, that truth had finally found its voice. Evelyn Pierce slid a USB drive across the table. "This contains your entire trail," she said firmly. "Every fraudulent real estate transfer, every undisclosed bank account, every meeting tied to your shell companies. The evidence has already been delivered to the Financial Crimes Division." Grant froze. "You... what?" Dr. Samuel Price, her lawyer, stepped forward from the corner. "The law doesn't sleep, Mr. Carver. It simply waits for the right evidence. And your wife provided it with patience, precision, and documentation." Grant's breathing quickened. "You can't do this. I built this empire." Rebecca finally spoke. "No," she said softly. "You stole it." The crowd gasped. Whispers spread through the guests like wildfire. Deception, greed, betrayal. Reporters scribbled notes furiously. Others streamed the chaos live. Grant looked around, desperate. His board members avoided his gaze. His allies had turned to stone. Even Mayor Judith Lang, once his biggest political supporter, slipped quietly out the side door. Then came the final blow. Henry Miles, the private investigator, stepped from the crowd. "You didn't just steal money," he said coldly. "You borrowed millions from dangerous lenders, people who don't forgive." Grant staggered back, realization hitting him like a storm. The world he built on lies was collapsing, the polished empire rotten beneath the surface. He had promised wealth, power, and legacy, but in chasing illusion, he forfeited everything real. Rebecca rose slowly. Her tone remained calm. "You once told me I was too quiet to matter, but silence isn't weakness, it's strategy." Grant looked at her, trembling. "Rebecca, what are you going to do?" She turned toward him, her face illuminated by the trembling light. "Exactly what you taught me," she said. "I'm going to finish what you started, only this time, with truth." Rebecca glanced at Samuel, her attorney. "Tomorrow morning," she whispered, "we take this from the table to the courtroom." And when the gavel fell, the name Carver would never rise again. The gavel struck once, sharp, loud, final. The echo filled the grand courtroom, drowning out whispers and camera clicks. At the defendant's table sat Grant Carver, once a man of influence, now pale, restless, eyes darting between his lawyer and the woman he had underestimated. Across the aisle, Rebecca Carver sat calm, hands folded, her face framed by quiet dignity. The light from the high windows fell over her like justice itself. Intensity roared. The judge's voice was firm. "This court convenes to address the charges of fraud, money laundering, and concealment of marital assets in the matter of Carver Realty versus Rebecca Carver." Dr. Samuel Price, Rebecca's attorney, stood tall. "Your Honor, we submit irrefutable evidence of fraudulent real estate transfers, shell companies, and undisclosed accounts, all orchestrated by the defendant to defraud both investors and his spouse." He clicked a remote. On the large screen appeared images, Grant's signature on doctored contracts, spreadsheets of overseas transactions, and wire transfers to Cynthia Monroe Investments, Ariel's sister's firm. The audience gasped. Grant's lawyer tried to object, but the judge cut him off. "Sit down, Mr. Collins. The documentation is clear." Evelyn Pierce, sitting behind Rebecca, watched the display unfold, months of investigation finally finding their voice. The private investigator, Henry Miles, nodded from the gallery. Every photo, every timestamp had come from his careful shadowing. He thought deception could rewrite truth, but the truth had been watching, waiting, collecting receipts. Grant slammed his hands on the table. She set me up. She planned this. Rebecca's calm voice sliced through the air. No, Grant. You set yourself up when you forgot that integrity was worth more than illusion. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Carver, the evidence against you is overwhelming. Your empire is rotten beneath the surface, built on greed, deceit, and arrogance. A hush fell. The Carver family name, once untouchable, was now being written into court records as a symbol of betrayal and downfall. Grant's father, Harold Carver, sat in the front row, face hard as stone. He whispered under his breath, "You destroyed everything your grandfather built." A tear escaped Rebecca's eye, not from sadness, but from release. For the first time, she felt the weight lifting. Judge Rowan Hale, known across Cedar Falls for his integrity, looked at Rebecca. "Mrs. Carver, this court recognizes your role in uncovering the crimes. Your testimony and documentation were crucial. The court hereby grants full ownership of all verified assets, real estate, trusts, and family inheritance to you." The courtroom erupted, reporters shouting, flashes blinding. Grant collapsed into his seat, whispering, "This can't be happening." Rebecca stood slowly. Her voice was calm, steady. "Every lie has its receipt, Grant, and justice keeps them all." The judge's gavel struck again. This court finds the defendant guilty. The empire had fallen not with an explosion, but with the quiet power of truth. Grant was led away in handcuffs, head down, cameras flashing. Rebecca exhaled, hands trembling slightly. Evelyn touched her shoulder. "It's over," she whispered. Rebecca looked toward the window where sunlight streamed through. "No," she said softly. "It's beginning." As the reporters swarmed outside, Rebecca glanced at the crowd and whispered, "Tomorrow, they'll know what freedom looks like." The courthouse doors burst open to chaos. Reporters shouted, cameras flashed, and the word guilty echoed through Cedar Falls like thunder. Grant Carver, once a man of influence, was led away in handcuffs. His once polished suit was wrinkled, his eyes hollow, his name now synonymous with betrayal, deception, and downfall. Intensity struck. As he stumbled down the marble steps, he caught sight of Rebecca Carver standing still at the bottom, calm, dignified, unshaken. She wasn't dressed for revenge but for closure. Her black coat flapped in the wind, the same calm grace she carried the night she pulled out those papers that shattered his carefully constructed life. "Rebecca, wait!" Grant's voice cracked through the noise. He pushed against the guards, desperation breaking what little pride he had left. "Please, I made mistakes, but I loved you once. Don't let it end like this." Rebecca turned, her gaze soft but unreadable. "It ended the night you introduced her," she said quietly. "What happens now is just justice catching up." The guards pulled him back, but he kept talking. "I lost everything. Please, I have nothing left." Rebecca took a slow breath. "You still have truth," she said. "Start there." He looked at her as though she'd spoken a foreign language. The mask of success he'd once worn was gone. All that remained was a broken man. He chased power, but she chose peace. And in the end, power crumbled while peace rebuilt. Hours later, the city quieted. Rebecca sat alone in her home, the same home he once ruled with arrogance. Now, it belonged entirely to her. The long oak table was polished and bare, the chandelier's glow warm instead of cold. In front of her lay a single folder marked closure. Inside were new deeds, new bank accounts, and one final document, a donation transfer. Every asset she'd reclaimed from the wreckage was now funding a foundation for women seeking justice and freedom. Evelyn Pierce entered, carrying tea. "You really gave it all away?" she asked softly. Rebecca smiled faintly. "It was never about money, Evelyn. It was about freedom." Evelyn nodded. "You've rewritten your future." Rebecca leaned back, eyes distant. "No," she said. "I just stopped letting someone else write it for me." The story began with humiliation, but ended with redemption. The quietest voice had become the loudest truth. A knock echoed at the door. Delia, the loyal maid, opened it, and there stood Grant. No guards, no arrogance, just a man stripped bare. Rain clung to his face like tears. "Rebecca," he whispered, kneeling at the threshold. "Please, forgive me. I'm begging you." She didn't move. Her voice was calm, almost kind. "Forgiveness isn't mine to give, Grant. You'll have to earn it from the life you broke." He lowered his head, defeated. Rebecca turned back toward her glowing table, where the foundation documents waited. "Goodbye, Grant," she said. "The world finally knows who you are and who I've become." As he disappeared into the rain, the chandelier's light reflected on the signed papers. Justice had spoken, but freedom had just begun. He dumped his disabled wife like she was nothing left, her crying on the cold ground, whispering, "Please, don't hurt me, I can't walk." To him, she was a burden, a broken woman who no longer fit his perfect image. He didn't know that the wife he abandoned, trembling, humiliated, and forgotten, secretly owned the very empire he bragged about every day. The luxury cars, the penthouse, the billion-dollar company, all of it, built on her father's legacy, with her name hidden behind the papers he never bothered to read. He thought he was walking away from weakness, but he was walking straight into his downfall. What he didn't expect was that the woman he called worthless would one day stand tall again and make him answer for everything he did. But how did a crippled, discarded wife turn into the woman who owned his empire? And his fate? Keep watching to find out. Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, please click subscribe. Every single click helps us tell stories of courage and truth. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from. Because when we share these stories together, we remind each other that even in pain, we can rise. The crystal vase shattered first, a sharp sound slicing through the silence like a scream. Naomi Carter, her body frail and trembling, fell backward, one crutch rolling across the polished marble floor. Her voice broke as she whispered, "Please, don't hurt me. I can't walk." Ethan Carter, her husband, stood above her, tall, handsome, and cruel. His tailored suit shimmered under the golden lights of their penthouse, but his eyes were colder than glass. "You can't walk?" he sneered. "You can't even stand in my life anymore." Tessa Lang, the young COO with perfect curls and a smirk too sharp to hide, leaned on the wall. "Ethan, she's holding you back," she said softly, pretending sympathy. "You can't run an empire with this." Her gaze dropped toward Naomi's twisted ankle brace like it was filth. From the corner, Margaret Carter, Ethan's mother, sipped champagne, silent but satisfied. "End it, son," she murmured. "She's already dead weight." Naomi's eyes widened. Fear, desperation, and vulnerability mixed in her tears. She reached for her crutch, but Ethan kicked it away, his patience gone. "You were supposed to make me look strong, Naomi," he snapped. "Instead, you made me look weak." "Ethan, please," she begged, voice shaking. "I gave everything to you. The company, the company?" He laughed. "My company. You were just the crippled daughter of a dead man with a last name I built into something real." The words hit like blows. Naomi's chest tightened. "You built nothing," she whispered. Your father gave me a chance," Ethan cut in sharply, "and I took it. That makes it mine." The silence that followed was suffocating. Naomi's breathing turned shallow. The camera would catch the reflection of her face in the marble floor, pale, broken, yet still alive with a flicker of resilience. Thomas Reed, the security guard standing by the door, shifted uneasily. His eyes met Naomi's for a split second. A silent plea passed between them, but he looked away. Orders were orders. Ethan threw a brown envelope at her chest. "Sign the divorce papers," he said flatly. "You'll get a small monthly allowance. That's more mercy than you deserve." Naomi's trembling hand reached for the pen, the ink shaking against the paper. She didn't sign, not yet. Instead, her fingers brushed against something in her robe pocket, her late father's old signet ring, engraved with the letter C. She closed her fist around it, and something in her expression changed. Not anger, not yet, just quiet strength, buried under years of pain. Ethan noticed nothing. "Pack your things," he ordered. "You're leaving tonight." Naomi's voice steadied. "And where will I go?" He smirked. "Anywhere but here." Tessa laughed, soft, cruel, victorious. The sound echoed through the penthouse as Naomi's eyes filled, not with tears this time, but determination. She looked at the door, then at the city lights beyond the glass wall. "You'll regret this, Ethan," she whispered under her breath. Ethan turned away. "I already don't." The camera closes in on Naomi's shaking hand, the ring glinting faintly under the light. Outside, thunder rolled far away, not from a storm, but from something coming. In the next, that faint glint will be the only thing left shining when she's dumped in the dark and someone unexpected will see it. The tires screeched against the wet pavement, a violent stop that jolted Naomi Carter's frail body forward in her wheelchair. Her trembling hands clutched the metal arms, knuckles pale. Ethan Carter, her husband, didn't even glance back. The rain outside the penthouse gate poured harder now, drumming like war against the hood of his black Mercedes. "Get out," Ethan said coldly. His voice held no trace of the man she once loved. Only cruelty, arrogance, and entitlement remained. Naomi's lips trembled. "Ethan, please. It's midnight. I can't. You can't walk, right?" He cut in, mockery dripping from every word. "Then roll. Someone out there might pity you." The back door opened with a sharp pull. Tessa Lang, his lover, leaned in. Her perfect red lipstick didn't smudge even in the rain. "She'll be fine," she said smoothly. "People like her always find a way to survive, just not with class." Naomi turned toward her. "You don't know what you're doing," she whispered. Tessa smiled. "Oh, but I do. You were a burden, Naomi, and we're just setting you free." Ethan pushed the wheelchair down the ramp. The rainwater splashed around her bare feet. The alley behind the high-rise was dim, littered with puddles and garbage bags. A broken neon sign flickered rain-soaked alley. Despair, vulnerability, humiliation. Naomi's voice cracked. "Please, Ethan. Not here. I can't even." "Don't make this harder," he said sharply, his tone like ice. He turned to the guard. "Thomas, she's no longer allowed inside the property. If she tries to return, call security." Thomas Reed, the tall, quiet security guard, hesitated. His brown eyes softened as he looked at Naomi, drenched and shivering. He'd worked for the Carters for 7 years and had seen their public smiles hide private cruelty, but his job was his lifeline. "Yes, sir," he muttered. Naomi tried to grab Ethan's sleeve. "I helped you build this life." He shook her off with a look of disgust. "You helped me? Don't rewrite history, Naomi. You were a prop, and now, the show's over." She watched as he stepped back into the car, the taillights flaring red through the storm. For a moment, she thought he might look back, but he didn't. Tessa's laughter echoed faintly as the car disappeared into the rain. Alone now, Naomi sat motionless. Her hair clung to her face. Her wheelchair sank slightly in the puddles. She stared at the city skyline, the towers Ethan claimed as his glimmering above her like a kingdom she could no longer touch. Tears mixed with rain as she whispered, "Father, if you can hear me, give me strength." Thunder rolled across the sky. A soft light flickered from a nearby diner window. Inside, a man and a little girl sat by the glass. The man turned his eyes, catching Naomi's outline under the streetlight. He frowned, concern etched on his tired face. The faint glow of the signet ring in her hand shimmered through the dark, like a signal waiting to be seen. Naomi blinked, the world blurring cold, pain, then silence. Her body slumped sideways, unconscious, as rain washed over her. Across the street, the man stood up, suddenly chair scraping. The little girl tugged his hand. "Daddy, is that lady hurt?" He looked once more at the alley. "Stay here, Chloe," he said softly, urgency rising in his voice. "Don't move." He grabbed his coat and ran into the storm. The man's name was Dr. Mason Brooks, a stranger whose single act of compassion would change Naomi's life forever and begin the slow rebirth of everything Ethan thought he destroyed. A pair of headlights cut through the rain like blades. Dr. Mason Brooks slammed his brakes the moment he saw her, a motionless figure slumped in a wheelchair beside the alley dumpster. The rain made her skin glisten like porcelain. Her head hung to one side, her fingers still gripping a silver signet ring that shimmered faintly under the streetlight. "Daddy," said a small voice from the back seat. "Is she sleeping?" Mason's heart dropped. "No, baby, she's not." He jumped out into the storm, leaving the car door open. Chloe Brooks, his daughter, watched with wide, innocent eyes, her little hands clutching a stuffed rabbit to her chest. Mason knelt beside the woman, pressing 2 fingers to her neck. A pulse, faint but steady. Relief hit him hard. "She's alive." He looked up at the restaurant window where people stared but didn't move. His jaw tightened. "No one even tried to help," he muttered, shaking his head. Compassion, moral strength, and human decency surged through him. Naomi's lips moved weakly. "Don't hurt me." Her voice was broken, small, terrified. Mason leaned closer, his tone calm, his movement steady. You're safe now. My name's Mason. I'm a doctor. Her eyes fluttered open, confused and glassy. Doctor? She whispered. He nodded. Yes. You're going to be okay. He lifted her from the soaked wheelchair, her body trembling under his jacket, and carried her toward the car. The sound of the rain softened as if the world itself was holding its breath. Chloe scooted aside. She can sit here, Daddy, she said softly, patting the seat beside her. Thank you, sweetheart. Mason gently laid Naomi down, covering her with his coat. She winced as pain shot through her leg. Fracture, Mason murmured to himself. Recent, untreated. The car sped off through the sleeping city, the wipers beating like a heart. Naomi's eyes flickered open again. Why? Why are you helping me? Mason kept his eyes on the road. Because someone has to. For a brief moment, she stared at his reflection in the mirror, this stranger who showed more empathy in 5 minutes than her husband had in years. At the hospital, bright lights swallowed them. Nurse Ellen, a firm but gentle woman in her 40s, hurried over. What happened? Possible assault, severe bruising, dehydration, fracture to left ankle, Mason said. All clinical precision but eyes filled with concern. Ellen's voice softened when she saw Naomi. Don't worry, dear. You're safe here. Naomi's gaze darted around the ER machines beeping, nurses rushing her body tense, as if still expecting Ethan's voice to shout her down. Please, she whispered. Don't call my husband. Mason exchanged a look with Ellen, quiet understanding. We won't, he promised. As they wheeled her toward a private room, Mason caught sight of the bracelet on her wrist, gold, engraved with the name Carter Foundation. His eyes narrowed. Carter? He turned to Ellen. Run her name through patient records. Something tells me this isn't random. Ellen nodded, confused but obedient. Naomi closed her eyes, exhaustion swallowing her. For the first time in years, she wasn't surrounded by cruelty, only quiet safety, the beginning of something she didn't yet understand. In the hallway, Chloe peeked through the door window. Daddy, she whispered. Will she wake up? Mason placed a hand on her shoulder. She will. But his voice carried more question than certainty. He looked back toward the bed, the faint ring light still gleaming on her finger, and his instincts whispered what logic couldn't yet prove. This woman wasn't just a victim. She was the key to something much bigger. In the next, that engraved bracelet will open a door Mason never expected, revealing a name powerful enough to shake the city's wealthiest empire. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet, please, take a second to do it now. Every click, every share, every comment helps us keep telling stories that give strength to women and children who've been broken, forgotten, or silenced. When you subscribe, you're not just supporting a channel, you're standing beside survivors, saying their stories matter. Turn on your notification bell so you never miss a story that could change a life. And in the comments, tell us where are you watching from and what part of this story spoke to your heart. Naomi jolted awake to the hiss of oxygen and the distant beep of heart monitors. For a split second, she thought she was still in that cold alley until she saw white walls, the glow of a soft lamp, and the faint hum of a hospital room. Her breath came fast. Panic clawed at her throat. Her body tensed. The scent of antiseptic mixed with the whisper of rain against the window. Where am I? She gasped, struggling to move. Her leg throbbed in pain. A calm, deep voice answered, You're safe now. Dr. Mason Brooks stood by her bed, sleeves rolled up, his eyes tired but steady. You were found outside, he said gently. Dehydrated, exhausted, with a fractured ankle. You've been out for 2 days. Naomi blinked, disoriented. 2 days? Her fingers trembled as she touched the bandaged leg. My husband. He'll. Mason cut her off softly, his tone firm but kind. He doesn't know where you are, and you don't owe him that anymore. His words carried calm authority and quiet moral strength, the kind Naomi hadn't heard in years. Across the room, Nurse Ellen, a kind woman with motherly warmth, checked Naomi's IV. You've been through a lot, sweetheart, she said, her voice full of compassion. But you're going to recover, one step at a time. Naomi's eyes filled with tears she didn't want to show. I can't even stand, she whispered. What kind of life is that? Before Mason could answer, the door creaked open. Amira Lewis, a physical therapist in her early 30s with confident energy, entered carrying a clipboard. "Good morning," she said cheerfully. "I'm Amira. Doctor, Brooks asked me to evaluate your mobility." Naomi's defenses rose instantly. "Mobility?" she repeated bitterly. "You mean remind me of what I've lost?" Amira smiled gently. "No, remind you of what you can still gain." That line froze the room for a moment. Even Mason looked impressed. Naomi turned her face toward the window, watching raindrops slide down the glass. Outside, the city glowed faintly, as if mocking her helplessness, but also reflecting her resilience waiting to be born again. After a moment, Naomi whispered, "Why are you helping me?" Mason replied quietly, "Because you deserve help. Everyone does. And because someone once helped me when I didn't deserve it." That line hung in the air, a fragment of his own unseen story. Naomi studied his face, realizing he carried his own kind of grief. Amira began testing Naomi's reflexes, explaining every move in simple words. Naomi flinched but followed along, pain flickering across her features. Each attempt made her feel vulnerable but also strangely alive, like a broken instrument finding its first note again. Chloe peeked through the door window, clutching her rabbit. Mason caught her reflection and smiled softly. Naomi noticed. "Your daughter?" He nodded. "Yeah. She's curious about people who fight to live. You'd like her." Naomi let out a fragile smile, her first in months. "Maybe one day." Ellen adjusted her blanket. "Rest now. You're safe here." But Naomi's gaze lingered on the bracelet around her wrist. Carter Foundation engraved in gold. She turned it slowly, her breath catching as memories flashed her father's voice. Her wedding day, Ethan's promise turned lie. Her heart pounded. "Carter Foundation," Mason murmured, noticing the engraving. "I've seen that name before. In hospital donations." Naomi froze. Mason frowned slightly, connecting dots in silence. "You're connected to them?" Naomi didn't answer, only turned her face toward the window. "Let's just say, it's a name that built him and broke me." The room went silent again, only the rain filling the space between words. Mason's eyes narrowed, the curiosity now burning. "Who's him, Naomi?" She looked up slowly, her expression cold and unreadable. "My husband." Mason's discovery of the Carter Foundation will soon lead him to uncover secrets hidden in the hospital's financial files, and a truth Naomi never knew existed. The hammering of applause filled the grand conference hall as Henry Carter, founder of Carter Holdings, raised a glass. His gray suit gleamed under the chandeliers. Beside him stood his daughter Naomi Carter, then only 24, poised, intelligent, and glowing with quiet pride. And standing at her side was Ethan, a young, ambitious executive with fire in his eyes and charm in his voice. "This," Henry said, his tone carrying the weight of legacy, "is the man I trust to lead the future of Carter Holdings and the husband my daughter has chosen." The crowd clapped again. Cameras flashed. Ethan smiled, shaking Henry's hand like a man accepting a crown. But behind that grin, something colder flickered: ambition, entitlement, and a hunger for power. Naomi turned toward him, eyes full of innocence and faith. "We'll build it together," she said softly. "Together," Ethan echoed, but his gaze had already shifted toward the gold-embossed Carter logo above the stage. The scene flashed forward years later. Same building, same logo, different tone. Henry's framed photo hung in the boardroom corner. A black ribbon crossed it. Naomi stood there, shoulders slumped, as Margaret Carter, Ethan's mother, adjusted her pearl necklace. "Your father was a great man," Margaret said coldly, "but the company needs stronger hands now." Ethan nodded from across the table. "Naomi, you're not ready to handle this alone. Let me take the lead. I'll keep your father's vision alive." Naomi hesitated. Her voice trembled. "I trust you, Ethan. Just promise me one thing. Don't lose the heart he built this company with." He smiled faintly. "Of course not." That was the last honest moment between them. From that day, Ethan began changing everything, cutting charity programs, firing old employees, investing in risky markets. Naomi raised concerns, but he silenced her with a kiss and a smile. "You worry too much," he'd say. "Let me handle the empire." But deep inside, Naomi started noticing small things. Documents missing her signature, bank notices she didn't recognize, meetings she wasn't invited to. Her father's loyal lawyer, Clara Jameson, warned her once. "Naomi, Your husband is moving assets. Quietly. You should be careful. Naomi had shaken her head. He wouldn't do that. Ethan loves me. Clara sighed. Power doesn't love anyone, Naomi. It only waits. Then came the day Henry's sealed trust arrived by courier, the day Naomi learned of the hidden clause her father had written before his death. It read, "In the event my daughter is betrayed by her spouse or rendered physically incapable, all controlling shares of Carter Holdings revert to her legal name, Naomi Carter, and cannot be transferred without her consent." Her breath caught. She didn't tell Ethan. Not yet. She folded the document quietly, hiding it inside her father's leather portfolio. That night, Ethan came home with wine and whispered plans for expansion. Naomi smiled faintly, eyes on the firelight reflecting in the glass. He thought he was rising to power. She was already holding it, just didn't know how much he'd make her use it. That same trust document, buried and forgotten, will later become the weapon that tears Ethan's empire apart. And someone in the shadows, the very lawyer who warned Naomi, will return to deliver it. The flash of cameras lit up the marble lobby like lightning. Ethan Carter, now sleek in a tailored navy suit, stood at the center of a press crowd, flashing his most polished smile. The room buzzed with questions, microphones thrust forward, and the hum of ambition in the air. "Mr. Carter," a reporter shouted, "rumor says you'll announce a major merger today worth billions. Is it true?" Ethan adjusted his cufflinks, letting the gold watch glint beneath the lights. "I don't deal in rumors," he said smoothly. "I deal in results." The audience chuckled, charmed, as always. Charisma, power, and confidence dripped from every move. Beside him stood Tessa Lang, his COO and lover, perfectly styled in a crimson dress that whispered control. "Carter Holdings," she announced to the cameras, "is entering a new era. Stronger, leaner, and freer of unnecessary baggage." The crowd clapped. Ethan smirked. Only Richard Dane, the cautious CFO, frowned quietly. He leaned closer and whispered, "Ethan, are you sure about this? Naomi still holds partial signatory rights on some accounts. We can't move forward without her legal clearance." Ethan's smile didn't waver. "Naomi signed everything before she left," he said confidently. "The papers were finalized weeks ago." Richard hesitated. "I never saw the original signatures, only copies from legal." Ethan's jaw tightened for half a second. Then the charm returned. "You worry too much, Richard. Trust me, she's not coming back." But behind that mask of ease, a flicker of fear crept into Ethan's eyes, a brief, private insecurity buried under arrogance. Tessa looped her arm through his. "Ignore him," she whispered. "This is your moment. You've earned it." He nodded, feeding off her manipulative confidence. Cameras continued flashing as he shook hands with investors, boasting about cutting loose what held the company back. Every mention of Naomi's absence was like a veiled victory speech. Meanwhile, in the shadows near the exit, one of the older board members muttered to another, "He forgets who built this empire. That woman's father made him." Their murmurs didn't reach Ethan. His ego drowned out warning bells. He raised his glass, voice booming through the mic. "To progress, to independence, to the empire I built from nothing." But the crowd's cheer didn't drown out the quiet gasp when Richard's assistant whispered something in his ear. He froze, then looked up at Ethan with pale shock. "Sir," he stammered, approaching quickly, "there's a problem. The Foundation's main trust accounts, they're frozen." Ethan's confident smile faltered for the first time. "What?" "Frozen, sir. Under Naomi Carter's authorization." The room went silent. Cameras clicked. Whispers rippled through the crowd like electricity. Tessa's face paled. "That's impossible." Ethan snapped. "Check again." But even as he barked orders, a faint tremor shook his hand. The reporters sensed blood. "Mr. Carter," one shouted, "is it true your estranged wife still controls Carter Holdings?" Ethan turned sharply, eyes flashing with anger and panic. "No comment," he growled, the same arrogance, cracking under the first blow of humiliation. Richard stepped back, quietly pulling out his phone. A message blinked on the screen, an email from an unknown sender. "You shouldn't have underestimated her." The color drained from his face. Ethan saw it, grabbed the phone, and read the message twice, his reflection trembling in the glass. Tessa whispered, "Who sent it?" Ethan's voice turned low. "Dangerous. someone who just made a very big mistake. Across the city, in a quiet hospital room, Naomi Carter would soon open her eyes to a visitor carrying the same message, the one that would begin her quiet, deliberate rise. The hospital door burst open with a force that startled everyone. Clara Jameson, a composed woman in her late 40s with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind, strode in carrying a thick brown envelope marked confidential. Her black suit was still damp from the rain, but her purpose cut through the air like thunder. "Where is Naomi Carter?" she demanded. Dr. Mason Brooks looked up from his desk, surprised. "She's resting. Who are you?" "I'm her father's attorney," Clara said, flashing her credentials. "And I need to see her now." Before Mason could respond, Amira Lewis stepped out from Naomi's room, her brow furrowed. "She's awake," Amira said quietly, "but please be gentle. She's been through hell." Clara nodded, her voice softening. "I intend to give her something worth living for." Inside the quiet hospital room, Naomi sat propped against her pillows, eyes distant, her fingers playing with the Carter Foundation bracelet. She looked smaller under the pale light, a woman broken but not defeated. When Clara entered, Naomi's expression changed from confusion to faint recognition. "You worked for my father," she murmured. "I did," Clara replied, setting the envelope on the bedside table. "And he worked for you, though he never told you how much." Naomi frowned. "What do you mean?" Clara pulled out a series of documents, crisp, sealed, official. Before he passed, Henry Carter placed all controlling shares of Carter Holdings into a private trust. "You're the sole beneficiary." Naomi's breath hitched. "No, that's impossible. Ethan owns everything. He thinks he does," Clara interrupted gently. "But legally, he's just a managing face. The empire he brags about was never his." The words landed like thunder. Mason stepped forward, stunned. "You're saying she owns the company?" Clara nodded. "Every account, every building, every contract under her trust. And now that her husband betrayed her, the clause is triggered automatically." Naomi stared at the papers, her pulse racing. Shock, disbelief, then realization. It all crashed over her. "So all this time," Clara said, "he was working for you." Naomi's lips parted, trembling. "He left me in an alley to die, and I still own his world." Amira moved closer, her voice soft but firm. "Then maybe it's time to stop surviving, Naomi, and start reclaiming." The room fell silent except for the rhythmic beep of the monitor. Mason's eyes lingered on Naomi's face, no longer frightened, but alive with a spark he hadn't seen before. She whispered, almost to herself, "I could end him with one signature." Clara folded her hands. "You could, but if you want the truth seen, we need to do this publicly, legally. Quiet power doesn't last forever. Public truth does." Naomi's gaze hardened, her reflection catching in the window like a ghost reborn. Strength, moral courage, empowerment, all in one expression. "Then we'll do it right," she said. "But I want to look him in the eye when he realizes who destroyed him." Clara gave a faint smile. "Then I'll arrange it." Mason watched as Naomi pressed her hand over the trust papers, whispering her father's name, under her breath. The once broken woman now looked like someone reborn through fire. Far across town, Ethan's phone buzzed with a notification from his bank, and when he saw the word Axis revoked, his face went white. The real war had just begun. The crash of metal echoed through the rehab room. Naomi Carter had fallen again. The crutch clattered across the floor as pain seared through her leg. "I can't do this," she shouted, tears burning down her cheeks. Sweat glistened on her forehead, her chest heaving from exhaustion. Amira Lewis, her physical therapist, rushed forward but didn't lift her right away. Her calm voice steadied the air. "You can, Naomi. You've already survived worse than a fall." Naomi pressed her palms to the floor, trembling. "Surviving isn't the same as living." From the doorway, Dr. Mason Brooks stepped in, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. His gaze softened when he saw her struggling. "Then let's start small," he said. "Survive the next step. Living comes after." Amira smiled faintly. "See? Even the doctor agrees." Naomi looked up, her face streaked with determination and vulnerability. Slowly, painfully, she reached for the crutch again. Amira adjusted her posture, Mason standing nearby just in case. "One more," Naomi whispered. "One more," Amira echoed. She rose, wobbling, teeth clenched, but she didn't fall this time. The sunlight spilling through the window caught her face, and for a fleeting second, she looked stronger than she ever had. Resilience, courage, and quiet strength radiated from her fragile frame. From the hallway, Chloe Brooks, Mason's daughter, peeked in, holding a small sunflower she'd drawn with crayons. "You did it," she squealed. Naomi turned, surprised by the child's joy. "You were watching?" Chloe grinned. "Daddy said, strong people fall but don't stay down." Naomi chuckled softly through tears. "Your daddy's a wise man." Mason walked over, handing Naomi a water bottle. "She's right, you know. You've done more in 2 weeks than most people do in months." Naomi sank into her wheelchair, breathing hard. "It doesn't feel like much." Amira knelt beside her. "Healing never does when you're in it. But trust me, you're rising." The tension eased into reflection. Naomi looked out the window at the city skyline, the same skyline Ethan once bragged he controlled. She felt no fear now, only a deep stillness. "I used to think power meant owning buildings and stocks," she said quietly. "But power is standing up when the world expects you to crawl." Mason watched her closely, seeing something awaken behind her calm tone, the same moral courage her father once carried. "You're not just standing, Naomi," he said softly. "You're rebuilding." Naomi turned toward him, a hint of gratitude in her eyes. "You've done more than you know." "Maybe," Mason replied, "but something tells me you're not finished yet." Amira folded her arms, smiling. "She's not. Tomorrow, we walk across that room without help." Naomi's lips curved into a half-smile. "Tomorrow," she agreed, gripping her crutch tightly. As she looked down at her leg brace, her gaze caught the faint reflection of her father's signet ring hanging from her neck. The weight of it was no longer a burden, it was a promise. The camera lingered on her determined face as Mason and Amira left the room, their voices fading. Chloe ran in, placing her sunflower drawing on Naomi's lap. In the center, written in childish letters, were the words, "Keep going." Naomi smiled, a smile born of pain and defiance, but her eyes flicked to the television across the room. A breaking news headline scrolled across the screen. "Carter Holdings faces legal crisis. Ownership under investigation." Her expression froze. The paper slipped from her hands. Naomi's recovery has only just begun, but soon, she'll discover that Ethan's empire is starting to crumble, and she holds the final piece that can bring it all down. The sound of glass shattering ripped through Ethan's office. A crystal tumbler hit the wall, fragments scattering across the floor. Ethan Carter, veins pulsing at his temples, slammed his fist against the desk. "Who leaked it?" he roared. Across the room, Tessa Lang, his elegant but scheming COO, sat with legs crossed, perfectly composed in a white blazer. "You're overreacting," she said coolly. "The press always exaggerates." Ethan's glare was sharp enough to cut through steel. "Exaggerates? They're saying Naomi still owns Carter Holdings." His voice cracked under the weight of panic. "Half of our investors froze their accounts this morning. The merger is dead, Tessa." Richard Dane, the CFO, adjusted his glasses nervously. "It's not just rumors," he admitted. "I've seen the documents online. Someone sent them directly to Kayla Monroe from the Financial Chronicle, an anonymous source. They included Naomi's trust signature." Ethan froze. His knuckles whitened. "That's impossible." Tessa's smile faltered. "You said she signed everything over." "I thought she did," Ethan barked. "I left her the papers." He paused, realizing what he'd said. The room went silent. Humiliation, fear, and denial flickered across his face. Richard frowned. "You left her the papers? Or you forced her?" Ethan spun toward him, voice low, dangerous. "Careful, Richard." But the CFO didn't back down this time. "Careful? You lied to the entire board. If those signatures weren't valid, this is corporate fraud. We could all go down." Tessa rose slowly, her heels clicking like gunshots. "Maybe," she said softly, "you should start thinking about damage control instead of tantrums." "Don't lecture me," Ethan snapped. "You're just as involved as I am." He wanted her gone." The tension in the room was a bomb waiting to go off. Tessa stepped closer, whispering through gritted teeth. "You're losing control, Ethan. And when men like you lose control, the world eats them alive." He grabbed her wrist sharply. "Watch your tone." Richard stepped forward. "Enough. We have bigger problems. Kayla Monroe's article goes live in an hour. Once it's published, the stock will crash. Ethan released Tessa's wrist, his breathing heavy. Then, "Stop it. I can't," Richard said. "It's already scheduled. The only one who could stop her is Naomi if she denies it." Ethan stared out the glass window at the city skyline, his reflection fractured by rain. Power, once his armor, now felt like a trap closing in. "She won't. She hates me." Tessa crossed her arms. "Then you'd better find a way to make her regret that." He turned to her slowly, his eyes dark. "I will. If she wants a war, I'll give her one." As thunder rolled outside, Richard's phone buzzed. He glanced down and paled. "Ethan, you need to see this." On the screen was a breaking news alert. Exclusive. Hospital records reveal Naomi Carter, found alive sources claim she's preparing a statement. Ethan's face went blank. "Alive?" he whispered. Tessa's smirk returned, faint but cruel. "Looks like your ghost just came back to collect what's hers." The office fell into stunned silence, the city lights flickering through the rain-streaked glass like lightning over a battlefield. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then she's not walking away this time. Across town, Naomi's phone would soon ring, an unknown number flashing on the screen, and when she answered, it wouldn't be a threat. It would be an invitation. One that would pull her out of hiding and place her face to face with Ethan again. The rehab center doors burst open with a violent slam that echoed through the hallway. Patients flinched, nurses froze, and a hush fell over the entire floor. Ethan Carter stormed in, his navy coat drenched from rain, rage burning behind his eyes. "Where is she?" he barked. At the far end of the hall, Naomi Carter heard his voice and froze mid-step, her crutch trembling in her grasp. Mason Brooks turned sharply, stepping in front of her instinctively. "Who are you?" Ethan's glare landed on him. "Her husband." The words sliced through the silence like a knife. Naomi's face paled. "No," she said quietly, voice steady despite her racing heart. "You lost that right the night you left me to die." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You think you can humiliate me? Leak my files? Make me a joke in front of the world?" Naomi's grip on her crutch strengthened. "The world just saw who you really are. You didn't need my help for that." Behind her, Amira Lewis stepped closer, calm but ready. "Sir, this is a recovery facility. You can't be here screaming at patients." Ethan ignored her, eyes locked on Naomi. "You think because you own some paperwork you're powerful now? That trust means nothing without me." Mason's voice, cut in, controlled, sharp. "That trust means everything without you." He moved slightly forward, blocking Ethan's path. Ethan scoffed, stepping closer until they stood almost chest to chest. "And who are you? Her new charity project? Her little doctor friend playing hero?" Mason didn't flinch. "No," he said simply. "I'm the man who picked her up from the alley you left her to die in." The words hit like thunder. Ethan blinked, the mask of control cracking for a split second. "That's not true," he stammered. She wanted to leave." Naomi's eyes filled, not with tears, but quiet anger. "You can rewrite stories, Ethan, but not the truth. I begged you not to hurt me." You laughed. Around them, a few nurses and patients gathered, silent witnesses. Ethan's composure began to crumble under their stares. "You think they care? They don't know what she's capable of." Amira crossed her arms. "What she's capable of is surviving you." Ethan's voice rose again, desperate now. "You think you can take my company? My name?" Naomi steadied herself on her crutch, standing tall despite the trembling in her leg. "It was never yours, Ethan. You just borrowed it." The line struck with moral power and finality. Ethan's breathing grew heavier, his pride twisting into humiliation. He turned, knocking over a chair, his fury spilling over. Mason motioned to security guard Thomas Reed, who had appeared quietly at the doorway. "Escort him out before he does something he'll regret." Thomas, the same guard who had watched helplessly that night in the alley, hesitated only a second before nodding. "Yes, doctor." As Thomas approached, Ethan spun toward Naomi one last time, his voice shaking. "This isn't over." Naomi met his eyes, calm and unafraid. "You're right," she said softly. "It's only beginning." He froze at her words, unsure whether it was a warning or a promise. Then Thomas grabbed his arm and guided him out. The door slammed shut, leaving silence in its wake. Naomi's body finally relaxed, her strength draining as Mason steadied her. Amira placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," she said. "You faced him." Naomi took a deep breath. Facing him was easy. she murmured. Now comes justice. Mason looked at her curiously. Justice? Her eyes lifted to the window, where rain streaked down like silver threads. Tomorrow, I take back everything he stole. That tomorrow would arrive with cameras, reporters, and a crowd too large to control the world finally watching Naomi Carter reclaim her power before everyone who once doubted her. The printer whirred like a storm brewing. Clara Jameson's hands moved quickly, sorting through contracts, trust papers, and ownership documents. The sound of paper slaps echoed through the quiet of the small office, thick with tension. Everything must be exact, she said sharply. One wrong number, and he'll twist the law against you again. Across the table sat Naomi Carter, dressed in a simple cream blouse, her hair tied back neatly. Her face no longer looked frail, it carried resolve, grace, and controlled fire. He's not twisting anything this time, she said firmly. Tomorrow, I take back what's mine in front of everyone. Mason Brooks leaned against the desk, arms crossed. Are you sure about doing it publicly? Once you step into that press conference, there's no turning back. The world will know your story. Naomi met his gaze steadily. Good. They should. For years he painted me as weak. Let them see who he really is. Amira Lewis entered carrying Naomi's crutch and a folder of rehab reports. You'll be walking tomorrow, she said softly. Not perfectly, but enough to stand tall when it matters most. A small smile tugged at Naomi's lips. Standing tall is all I need. The tension shifted, softening for a brief moment as Chloe Brooks, Mason's daughter, peeked in shyly. Miss Naomi? She said, clutching a small blue ribbon. I made you something. Naomi turned, surprised. What is it, sweetheart? Chloe stepped forward, tying the ribbon gently around Naomi's crutch handle. It's for courage, she said proudly. Daddy says brave people always carry a little color. The room fell silent for a heartbeat, the child's innocence piercing through all the darkness that had built around Naomi's life. Naomi smiled, voice trembling just slightly. Then I'll take this courage with me. Clara cleared her throat, bringing everyone back to focus. You'll arrive at the conference at 10 a.m. sharp. The board, the media, and the investors will be there. You'll announce your full legal control of Noun Carter Holdings. I'll handle the financial verification live. Naomi nodded slowly. And Ethan? Clara's expression darkened. He's been served an injunction. He won't see it coming, not until you're already at the podium. Mason frowned. You really think he won't crash the event? Clara exhaled. Knowing him? He'll try. But we'll be ready. Naomi's eyes lifted to the window. Outside, the city lights shimmered, each one a reminder of the empire her father built, and Ethan claimed. Tomorrow, she whispered, the truth walks with me. Amira placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. You're not alone. We'll all be there. The air settled into calm. Moral courage, female empowerment, and justice hung heavy in the atmosphere like the quiet before thunder. Naomi's hand brushed against the folder with her father's name embossed in gold. I wonder, she said softly, if he'd be proud of how I'm fighting. Mason smiled faintly. He wouldn't just be proud. He'd be watching. The lights flickered briefly, a hush settling over the room, then the sound of Clara's phone buzzed sharply on the table. She glanced at the screen, her face hardening. It's from the press line, Clara said, voice tight. They're saying Ethan just issued his own public statement, claiming you forged every document. The room went cold. Naomi's pulse quickened. Clara looked at her gravely. Tomorrow just got harder. Naomi's jaw set, her tone steady and cold. Then I'll make sure it ends louder. At sunrise, Naomi will step before the cameras, but what waits on that stage isn't just exposure or revenge. It's a reckoning powerful enough to destroy or redeem them both. The air inside the Grand Hilton Conference Hall pulsed with chaos. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, and hundreds of eyes locked on the stage. The tension was so sharp it could cut through glass. At the center of it all stood Ethan Carter, perfectly groomed, his confidence glued back together with arrogance. Beside him, Tessa Lang held a champagne glass, her crimson lips curved in satisfaction. Behind them glowed the company logo, Carter Holdings, the future of power. Ladies and gentlemen, Ethan began, his voice booming through the mic. Today marks a new era of leadership, innovation, and strength. The doors at the back of the hall opened. The noise faltered. The crowd turned. Naomi Carter entered. She wasn't in a wheelchair this time. Her crutch moved in rhythm with her steps. The soft click echoed like a drumbeat of resilience. Her cream suit caught the light, poised, radiant, unshaken. Clara Jameson walked beside her, briefcase in hand. Mason Brooks and Amira Lewis followed close behind. Ethan froze. His smile died mid-sentence. "What is this?" he hissed under his breath. Naomi reached the podium. "Correction," she said calmly, taking the microphone from his hand. "Today doesn't mark your new era, Ethan. It marks the end of your theft." Gasps filled the room. Cameras flashed brighter. Ethan laughed nervously, trying to regain control. "She's confused. My ex-wife has been unwell. Please, let's—" Clara stepped forward, her voice like iron. "Unwell enough to survive your abuse? Or unwell because she trusted you?" She opened the briefcase, pulling out documents, sealed and notarized. These are the original trust records, transfer deeds, and bank certifications, proving Naomi Carter is the sole owner of Carter Holdings. The room erupted in shock. Reporters surged forward, shouting questions. Ethan's hand trembled slightly. "That's a lie," he said through clenched teeth. "You forged." Clara's voice cut him off. "Every signature verified, every seal authenticated. You signed them yourself, Ethan, the day you handed her divorce papers." Tessa's smile vanished. "Ethan, you said." Ethan turned on her. "Not now." His voice cracked, revealing the first thread of fear unraveling his composure. Naomi's tone stayed calm, cutting deeper than anger ever could. "You thought throwing me away would make you powerful. But all you did was hand me everything you built and everything you stole." The audience whispered like a rising tide. Ethan's face flushed red. "You think this makes you strong? You can't run a company, Naomi. You're standing," she interrupted. The room went silent. The camera zoomed in. Naomi stood tall, steady on her crutch, eyes unflinching. "And I'm not running from you anymore." The moral reversal hit like lightning. Ethan's jaw twitched. Sweat formed at his temple. He looked to the board members for support, but none met his eyes. One of the reporters raised a mic. "Mr. Carter, is it true you embezzled funds from your wife's trust?" Ethan's voice broke. "No, she's lying." But just then, a large screen behind them flickered and video footage began to play. It showed Ethan's voice recording, taken from his office. "She's dead weight. Once she's gone, I'll take the company, the assets, everything. She'll never know." The hall exploded in chaos. Tessa stepped back, horrified. The board members shouted. Investors walked out. Ethan's knees buckled slightly. Naomi didn't speak again. She just looked at him, not with hate, but with the quiet power of someone who had already won. Cameras flashed like lightning as Ethan stumbled off the stage, his empire collapsing in real time. Naomi turned her gaze toward the crowd, her father's words echoing in her memory. "Real strength isn't loud, it's steady." She exhaled slowly, eyes calm. "My father built this company with honor. I intend to rebuild it with truth." Mason's voice from behind her whispered, "It's over." Naomi shook her head gently. "No," she said, "it's just beginning." As the chaos raged, Naomi didn't see the shadow moving through the exit, Tessa, clutching a hidden drive. And what was on it could still destroy everything Naomi just reclaimed. The lights from 100 cameras flared at once, a blinding storm of flashes and shouts. "Naomi, over here! Is it true he forged the transfers? Did he abuse you?" Reporters surged forward, their microphones like weapons. Naomi Carter didn't flinch. She stood at the podium, her calm power radiating against the chaos. Behind her, the massive screen still displayed Ethan's voice, recording his cruel words echoing through the hall. "She's dead weight. Once she's gone, I'll take everything." The crowd's noise built into a roar. Ethan Carter, his suit rumpled and face pale, stumbled toward the stage, shouting over the noise. "This is defamation. She's lying. I built this empire." Clara Jameson, composed and razor-sharp, stepped forward. "Correction. Mr. Carter, you stole it. Every transfer, every signature, every account number was verified through your personal login. We have proof of embezzlement, forgery, and fraud." The board members turned in shock. Richard Dane, the CFO, finally stepped out of the crowd, holding a flash drive. His voice trembled but carried the weight of truth. "I worked for you for 8 years, Ethan. I kept quiet because I was afraid. But I'm done covering for you." He handed the drive to Clara. "It has everything: the fake invoices, offshore transfers and emails where you plan to frame Naomi as mentally unstable. Gasps rippled through the room. Ethan froze, his arrogance crumbling. Richard, don't. But the screen flickered again, showing an image. A bank statement with Ethan's name, tied to multiple shell accounts. Clara's voice was clear, merciless. Here is the man who called his wife broken while stealing from the very company she owns. The crowd erupted. Cameras snapped, furiously. Reporters shouted questions Ethan could no longer answer. His public downfall had begun. Naomi turned to him, her tone steady, every word cutting with moral precision. You wanted to erase me, Ethan, but the truth doesn't stay buried. It rises just like I did. Her eyes glistened, not from pity, but from strength earned through pain. Ethan took a step back, panic overtaking his anger. You'll regret this, he muttered. Naomi's gaze stayed locked on him. No, she said softly. You will. Security began to close in. The once mighty CEO tried to push through the crowd, shouting, You can't take my company. But no one listened. The reporters followed Naomi now, their cameras pointed only at her. Clara leaned close, whispering, We'll proceed with full charges. This is over. Naomi's expression softened for a moment, not triumph, but release. No, she said quietly. It's justice. The crowd chanted her name as Ethan was led away. His shoulders slumped, his world collapsing. The power reversal was complete. The man who mocked her broken legs now dragged his own feet through shame. Naomi stepped off the podium, guided by Mason Brooks, who whispered, It's done. She shook her head. Not yet. Her eyes caught movement at the far exit, a figure in red slipping out silently. Tessa Lang. Clara followed her gaze. What is it? Naomi's tone dropped to a whisper. She's not running. She's hiding something. The camera panned to Tessa outside the building, sliding into a car, clutching a silver flash drive. Her phone glowed with a message. Transfer complete. Move before she finds out. The car sped away into the night. The next morning, that drive would resurface, and its contents would reveal that Ethan wasn't the only one guilty. The betrayal Naomi thought was over had just evolved into something far darker. The morning sun poured through the glass walls of the Carter Rehabilitation Center, the same building that once bore Ethan's name. Reporters stood at a respectful distance this time. The crowd had gathered not for scandal but for rebirth, closure, and justice. The camera opened on Naomi Carter, walking without a crutch for the first time. Her steps were slow but steady, her cream dress glowing in the golden light. The air carried the weight of victory, not loud or vengeful, but calm, like a sunrise after a storm. Flashbulbs clicked again, but this time there was no tension, no shouting, only admiration. Strength, forgiveness, and peace filled her presence. She stood before the microphone. When I first came here, she began, her voice steady and warm, I was broken not just in body, but in spirit. I thought my worth was gone because someone else said it was. But pain doesn't define us. What we rise from does. The audience fell silent. Mason Brooks watched from the front row, pride softening his eyes. Beside him, Amira Lewis smiled, remembering the woman who once collapsed in the rehab room and whispered, I can't do this. Naomi continued, This center will be free to all survivors of abuse, coercion, and betrayal. It's built not from revenge, but from resilience. My father's legacy was business, mine will be humanity. Clara Jameson nodded approvingly, her voice breaking the stillness. You've rewritten what power means, Naomi. You turned pain into purpose. Naomi looked out over the crowd, investors, reporters, community families, and for a moment, her gaze softened at the sight of Chloe Brooks, holding a small basket of sunflowers. The same ribbon she once tied to Naomi's crutch now fluttered in the breeze, tied around her wrist. Naomi bent down to accept the flowers. Thank you, she said. Chloe grinned. You don't need luck anymore. You already won. The crowd applauded gently. Naomi smiled, but her eyes drifted upward toward the blue sky. Winning, she said softly, isn't about taking back what was stolen. It's about never letting anyone steal your heart again. The reflection hung in the air, a message carved in quiet wisdom. Mason approached as the ceremony ended. Your father would be proud, he said. Naomi turned to him, her tone light but sure. He taught me the numbers. Life taught me the value. As the cameras faded and the guests began to leave, Clara approached, holding a sealed envelope. "This was sent this morning," she said quietly. "No return address." Naomi hesitated before opening it. Inside was a small silver flash drive and a single line written in neat handwriting. "Truth never ends, it only waits for its next witness." The sound of Naomi's heartbeat filled the silence. She turned the drive over in her palm, her face unreadable. Mason frowned slightly. "What's on it?" Naomi looked out over the city skyline, calm, steady, yet alert. "I don't know," she said softly, "but something tells me the past isn't finished speaking." The camera pulled back, showing Naomi framed against the morning sun, a symbol of hope, healing, and rebirth. "Hello, family," Naomi's voice carried over the final shot. "If you've ever been broken, remember this. Your pain isn't your ending, it's your beginning. Please subscribe, share this story, and tell us where you're watching from. Every time you do, you help another voice rise just like mine."